Tim Benson from the Omaha Children's Museum. How you doing today?
Hey, doing good. Thank you.
Good. Well, we're really interested to hear kind of what's going on in Omaha, what's going on at the museum. So, can you kind of give us a rundown of sort of kind of a day in the life of Tim and what's going on with the museum and your staff?
Yeah, I'm the director of guest experience of the Children's Museum. So I oversee the kind of the guest facing staff, a lot of the operations team. So my team specifically pretty obviously impacted pretty greatly, but we closed March 13th to the public. And then about March 20th, 22nd, somewhere around there, we went pretty strict, limiting even who was in the building. So we sent all of our admin team home between the 13th and 20th, set up people working from home. We started kind of scheduling who was in the building working on projects so that we didn't have a lot of overlap, and had a lot of maintenance coming in between all of those shifts. So pretty significant change, obviously, when you're a guest facing or customer facing operation when you close. But we closed to the public, but we've been able to commit and keep on our team. So right now we're scheduled to close through the month of April, with possibility of extending that based on circumstances closer to the end of this month. But we've announced today we'll be paying our team through the month of April. So it's been great to be able to keep on our team and keep people engaged, and still do some activity and projects in what we've never had as an off season. So that's been great, and our team has been appreciative of that. So yeah, I guess our main focus right now is to be able to work on projects that we can from home, and then find ways to stay in touch with our guests and our customers. So a lot of virtual interaction and things like that. So.
Yeah, well, that's amazing that you're able to keep your staff on board, and that's something Matt and I have been talking about a lot. As far as what can we do with staff who now is working at home, for organizations like yours that are able to keep their staff on payroll. So, kind of curious what you're doing to be able to engage your whole team while they're at home, and they obviously can't do their regular guest-facing jobs because there are no guests. But as far as ways to be able to really keep them involved.
Yeah, it's been a struggle to keep people engaged. I think that first week, that week and a half, it was a big challenge for everybody, myself included. Like, you're now working at home, you've got kids and family and all this other stuff going on. That first week or so was very unproductive, and that's okay. We kind of knew that people needed some adjustment. You needed to find this new way to balance your time and your priorities. But like, I've got a daughter upstairs doing her virtual school. My wife's at home working. Our son is real little is here, so it's we have this big balance to figure out, and so we know our entire teams have that as well. Some people have different circumstances, so that first week really we needed to learn and figure out what to do. But since then, we've been able to kind of get everybody into a routine. We know we're in this situation for at least the month of April, probably longer. And so finding that routine was important. So a lot of my team is, not a Monday through Friday staff. They're used to working nights and weekends and variable shifts. And so we could not go to a real strict and rigid format and expect them to be able to take that change on top of all the other changes. So being flexible with them, excuse me, and getting into some routines was helpful. So my team now knows my routine around like what I have going on, and I know theirs. I know some of them are going to be checking in late at night because during the day they're taking care of the kids, and the spouse is working. So being flexible with them was important, and has allowed them to continue to stay productive and engaged. That was an important step for my team specifically. Yeah, so we've found a lot of ways to kind of generate ideas and projects for them to do just by asking a lot of them. So putting it out to the team, like, hey, how do we stay engaged with our guests? And we have some people who stepped up, pretty big and came up with some great ideas and are owning it and kind of running with it on their own. So we've been doing a lot of videos. There's one guy is a Tinker Lab coordinator on our team. So he oversees a small Tinker Lab in our museum, and he set up a spot in his basement around his computer, and it's Ben's Tinker Lab basement now. And he's doing videos like every couple days, building stuff at home, finding projects that he can do videos for and still teach people how to build things. That's been a lot of fun. And then we have an entire programming staff who does live shows and science experiments and things like that. And so they've all adapted and are doing a lot of that from home. We have one person who's doing cooking classes every couple days. So that team is naturally a very creative team. They're coming up with shows and programs in the museum on a regular basis. So they were able to adjust very quickly to now you've got to come up with programs that you can do at home, and they just ran with it. So that's been really great to see. That's the staff, my team specifically, has struggled because our 95% of our job was to reset and recuperate in the museum while we're open. So putting toys back, cleaning up areas, resetting exhibits so that they can be played with again, restocking paint. That's the team that struggled with this probably the most, is now what do I do? And so we've come up with projects for them, but it's definitely outside of their skill set. They're not trained for the things we're coming up with. They're not trained to come up with videos and programs and things like that. And so making sure that they understand that we're asking them to do some new things, and there's not any judgment in it. So we know we're going to keep on our team through the month of April. We want them to be engaged. I want them to be productive, just because I can't think in any other terms, but I also know that they can't do their jobs. It's literally impossible for them to do their jobs right now. So coming up with a job for them to do, you really have to treat it like a stretch goal. Like, I hope you get something great out of this. I hope we get something great out of it as well. But if we don't, I guess I'm less concerned about that. My priority is keeping you involved and engaged with the organization, so that you're not, just, sitting at home depressed or bored, or like when the time comes to reopen, we don't need to rebuild your engagement. So the productivity has become less of a priority for me, and it's been more of a how do we take advantage of this situation? And I acknowledge we're in a pretty fortunate situation to be able to pay our staff that aren't doing anything that I could tie back to an ROI. They're literally coming up with jobs to do just to fill their time, and we're hoping to see some long-term benefit from that. But if not, that's okay as well. So some examples: we're rebuilding all of our training materials, training programs, resources. We're rebuilding that from scratch. And I keep telling people, like, this needs to be award-winning, because we've had a long time to work on it. And with no distractions. You guys have been here for years. You know your jobs. You know what's expected. Let's set up our future team through this resource. So doing a lot of training manuals, but even that is kind of outside of their normal scope. I mean, this is a frontline staff, not a design staff. It's so they're struggling to make it look good, and so we're still finding challenges with that, even though they know their jobs well, and could do it and could teach it, but coming up with a document is a different skill set. So Yeah.
Okay. Tim, I'm curious. It might be too early in the process, but I love the concept of the stretch goal and kind of delegating things to people that they may or may not be 100% ready for or 100% productive at, but you're okay with that, and you've got no judgment around that. I'm curious if you've seen anybody that surprised you so far with kind of going beyond what you thought they would or could at this point, or are we too early in the process to assess that?
No, I think that's a good question, and yes to all of those things. So I've got people who've surprised me both ways. I've got people who I maybe day one thought I'm going to be able to lean on this person, and has struggled with the change, and has struggled to stay engaged and be productive. So that was surprising in the negative way. And then I've had people who have absolutely no reason to be doing as well as they are, and they've just taken off. So yeah, I think at the end of this, we're going to know who our most adaptable and versatile team members are, and we're going to know who our more rigid team members are. So, and that goes top down. I mean, we know from our leadership down to our frontline staff, like we know how rigid everybody is in what they do. So yeah, I've had a couple people who have completely owned a project and taken it far beyond what we expected. And some of those, people were, I was hoping for those results. Some of these projects were already started before all of this happened. And so this has been a blessing for them to be able to really focus on this. This was going to be probably I had one project that probably was going to take a year, to be honest, how long it was going to take this person to do it by themselves. And they'll be done by the end of the month. So that's been nice. And they've been able to completely own it from start to finish. And then, of course, it got finished, and I was like, okay, let's do more. Let's make it better. Let's add some design. Let's add pictures. And so we have the luxury of that to be able to make something amazing. So I hope that, at the end of this, a lot of people have better processes and training and material like that. And there's maybe better safety regulations, or, in places that we're lacking. I hope that at the end of this, we have some focus on that. And then we've had some people who've stepped up in very creative ways, like our Tinker Lab coordinator was a surprise to me that he was able to adjust so quickly and make those changes. But that was a pleasant surprise. So yeah, we've definitely had some people within the first week, they show how they're going to handle this, and we have some people who needed a week or two to figure it out, and now we'll see through the rest of this month how they go. But I'm also running out of ideas. I'm running out of projects to give our team, and I just desperately want to go into the building to do stuff. I have a long list of things that we can do in the building that I really hope we get to accomplish before we reopen. But we'll see what this situation, how it continues. So
when you do run out of ideas, is there any way, or are there gears turning with this, of how your staff is also able to do some form of their job during this time, which is engaging with guests, even though you don't have guests in the building, you don't have your staff in the building, but being that your role is primarily guest experience, have you been able to kind of execute some of those strategies, or is that purely kind of defined between operations and marketing? I know social media and guest experience aren't often the same thing. Right now, they really are the same thing, because that's the only way our
Yep.
guests are able to experience. So is there any crossover in that space?
yeah, I think the first day we closed, I told our marketing director, who manages social media and all of that, I told her that we're going to dump really just a ton of ideas on you. And we're going to dump footage and pictures and anything we can think of. You do what you want with it. I'm not going to dictate what you do with it. And I'm okay if you say, I'm not going to do anything with this. Like, we're doing it to give you material. But one of our focuses, one of our primary goals for my team and our programmer, our kind of performance staff, our primary goal is to generate content for our marketing team to use. And then we'll leave it to them how they use it, when they use it, what the right balance is. Because that's what they're trained to do. So we've activated our team to generate that content, because I know, the marketing director, she now has to put out, 7 or 8 things a day versus, 1 a day, the prior to this. So I know that she needs content. So if we can generate 20 things a day, then she can use what she wants. She can backlog more other stuff, so that we don't know how long this will last. So if we can give her that content, she can then edit and use it as she wants. So that's been one of the tasks, one of the goals of our team, is to generate those ideas. And it is that engagement. So our guests, especially we have a pretty high member base. They know our team pretty well. I mean, they know our front desk lead. They know our gift shop lead. They know the staff throughout the museum on a typical basis. They recognize their faces. So we want them to show up. Our gift shop person just did like an unboxing video last week, just to let kids see their faces, because they're like a nanny that, they see them once or twice a week, sometimes with our super users. So the kids expect to see the exhibits, they expect to see the museum, but they also expect to see some of our staff that are there, 5 days a week. So our primary goal for my team is to generate content, and for our marketing team to be able to stay connected with our guests. The problem is we've got 45 people on my team. So if we generate 45 things a day, well, we're way past usable content. So yeah, there's still definitely maybe 20 of us involved in creating content and 10 of us working on training material. And there's still a 15 or 20 person team that lacks that strong, purpose and connectivity to the organization. So,
yeah. Tim, if we could switch gears just for a second to when we do get to reopen, right? Because that's an eventuality that we're all hoping for as soon as possible. You guys have been able to keep your staff on payroll, which is fantastic. So talk to me about what you anticipate that process looking like. For example, if you get to open, May 1st, because you've already got people on payroll, what do you feel like that process will be like to get them back in the building, reacquainted with everything and ready to serve your guests?
Yeah, it's actually been kind of what I'm working on this week is that reopen plan. And I've really approached it from a couple different perspectives. So one, we could reopen soon. We all want to open, but whether that happens or not, we'll see. But we could reopen with, open the floodgates, or we could reopen with a trickle. And so we've got to be prepared for both of those. So we could be, the pent up demand that everyone talks about, which I think is very optimistic and hopeful. And then a trickle is we're going to reopen, and the people who are maybe less extreme about their social distancing are going to come in. And then as the situation gets better, we'll get busier over time. And so coming at it with two different approaches is, double the work. We've got to be prepared for both situations. And if we open slow, we could become very busy very fast. So we've got to be able to respond quickly. So we would normally be doing a ton of hiring right now. Actually, I mean, in March, we would have been doing a ton of hiring for summer. Summer is going to start whenever we reopen, so our staffing levels are not high enough right now for us to reopen. But until we have a better picture of when that'll be, it's hard to bring people on. So we're doing a lot of virtual auditions and virtual hiring with kind of flexible start dates. So you might start May 1st, you might start June 1st, but we've got to get you on board now so that you're ready to go. A risk in that is a lot of those people are going to not come in. You're going to hire them and bring them on board, and then they're going to find somewhere else to work that's starting now, because they need to get to work. So that's definitely been a challenge for hiring is how do you have rolling start dates? In the past, it's your start date is when school ends, and you can't really do anything about that. School ends and then we need you. Now school has ended. So they don't need to wait. They can go get a job right now. And so it'll be more challenging to hire people in advance and have them ready to go. So so hiring for this tentative start date has been a challenge, and coming at it from those two different perspectives. But we're planning to do a lot of training with our existing staff virtually. So we're rebuilding training manuals and things like that. We're then going to essentially recertify or retrain our entire team. So using virtual meetings and things like that. Simple as having somebody in the museum, on their phone, like, hey, this is the carousel. These are the operating steps. Here are the buttons. So here's a virtual tour and training of how this operates. All of our staff has been trained on this already, so it's a refresher. But maybe we want to add a couple points to that. So essentially, we will retrain and recertify our entire team virtually before we open, so that day one they're maybe off to a better start, and we can kind of hit the ground running. We know that we'll probably be less staffed than we want to, no matter what. There will still be a lot of people who, we will probably reopen before there's an all clear, like everyone is fine, it's all good, everything, the world is better. Things will happen gradually, instead of, all at once it'll happen. So we know that some of our team may not be able to return or may not want to return to work, especially working closely with the public the way we do. So we know that we'll be less staffed than we want to be when we open, no matter what, how busy we are. And so we've been doing some work on it, kind of acknowledging that. So how do we improve our processes to allow for more productive and efficient use? So how do we get our admission process sped up? How do we improve that process so that less people can do the work, which is nice. I mean, obviously, anytime you can improve a process, it's a better experience for the guest. It's a better experience for your budget, and in every way, it improves. And so, if we are able to improve our processes to get the job done with less people, we'll be able to adapt to a flexible opening a little more easily. And then one of the goals for me, and my team right now is when we reopen, how do we engage on a different level? And how do we kind of meet this new expectation that we've never had before? So guests have always expected us to be clean, but it's been a passive expectation. You're okay until I see something bad. Right. Now it's the exact opposite. They expect to see us cleaning at all times. They won't think we're clean unless they can smell the material, unless they can see people wiping stuff down. And so there are new expectations. There will be different expectations of social distancing when we open. Some people will be, hey, everything's back to normal because you're open, and some people will expect kind of the social distancing that essential businesses are doing now. And so how do we prepare our building and our staff to meet that? And then I guess the one other thing I'm trying to get some of my team engaged with, how do we solve this, is how do we become a more active voice to our guests? So when they come into the building, they have these expectations that they're not stating out loud. So when they ask a question, how do we probe farther to get to what they really want to know? So if they're asking a question about cleanliness, or how big is this room, or how many people can fit, I think we're going to have a lot more capacity questions than we've ever had before. So getting our team, like, hey, you really don't care what the capacity is. What you're asking is, am I going to be able to safely play with my kids at the museum without, another kid coughing on me, and, like how much room can I have? What's my bubble? So identifying some of those new expectations that we know our guests will have, and then how do we train our team to be able to speak to them, and frankly, like, what are the answers? We have some areas that I think we're going to have to put kind of number or capacity limits on, and we're going to have to convert some of our staff to kind of gate managers. Only so many people can come in this room at one time, especially our rooms that are designed for the littlest kids. We have one space that's designed for 5 and under. As you can imagine, like, if you're under the age of 5, your hygiene is terrible. So how do we keep that room safe, which means how do we limit the number of people that are in it, and how do we clean that room faster than we've ever done and more than we've ever done to be able to meet that expectation. And so I think that's the challenge, is we've got all these new expectations, and how do we adjust our processes and our team to meet those. And some of that's going to require training and a mind shift of our current team. So having the luxury of them not working right now, they can be involved in the solution, so that when we do reopen, they can speak to this because they are the ones who wrote the answer. They're the ones who brainstormed together to come up with this new process. So if I can say, okay, guys, playground, we know these are the challenges, come up with solutions. And then they come together, they come back to me with solutions, we fine tune it. They now own that solution. So when we reopen, they're going to be the ones I expect to execute that solution as well. So that's really the kind of focus of Reopen that I have, is new expectations and adaptable hiring. So how do we have the right number of people, and how do we have a process set up to be able to quickly onboard people and get them in once we know we can open. So
excellent. Well, Tim, this has been fascinating. I really appreciate your time spending with us today. We went over a lot of things, a lot of great tactics for your, engaging your teams and things like that. So I really appreciate that. Really appreciate, all your thoughts on the new opening piece. So just want to thank you for your time. Thank you for all that insight, and I hope you and your family and your teams all stay safe. And hope we get to see you soon and get into the building as soon as possible.
Excellent. Thank you, guys.